Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's a workshop. Oh, maybe the meeting will be. And then,
Why don't they just leave it in?
because we don't have the guy scheduled. So, next, I have no general comments. So we'll get to the public comment. And we have a number of public comment, first of which our school board liaison, Mr. Steve Shyman. Would you please come forward and let us hear good words from the school board?
Okay, we had a meeting last week. We had a finance meeting. At the board meeting, we did go through final areas for consideration of RADs and budget for next year, preliminary budget for next year, and from transportation, from food service, and from technology. So we now have all the things in hand, and the next two meetings we have to decide, think through what RADs we're going to recommend. And with regard to the Finance Committee, of which I am now chairman, our primary concerns at this very short meeting we had were the number of students at TA next year, which there are proposals to build up the number to more than we anticipate in order to be safe about it. And then we have to, on the other hand, there's a negative to that because over-predicting like that raises everything up. And so we have to decide on that. And the other thing is we sort of arrived at a 4% MAT, which is is about the highest it could be, or it has been in past years, and is a fairly safe figure. So those items came up, and then we discussed some busing, school bus leases, how to handle those, and there's also a purchase of a small truck involved, and we do have still some options on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shyman. Next, any
Okay.
questions to my left? Any questions to my right? Thank you very much, Mr. Shyman. Next person up, Mr. Sean Tarpey, if you would step forward, state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. My name is Sean Tarpey, and I'm at Rummery's Boatyard on Cleve Street in Biddeford. I just want to make a couple of general comments. You'll notice that there's a dredge in the river, actually two dredges in the river. The river is rather vital to my livelihood and that of my employees at Rummery's Boatyard, and we're very pleased that the two cities have worked so hard to get the Army Corps of Engineers to fund this dredging and to come complete the upper part of the river and tackle the mouth of the river at this point, and I just hope they finish. A clean river is also vitally important to our business, and the health of the river is vital, and I think in large part we have the Saco River Corridor Commission to thank for that. So I just wanted to thank you and to thank the corridor.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Tony Carras. Am I pronouncing that?
Withdraw my name from
Oh, okay. All right. No problem. Mr. Richard LaRue. Mr. LaRue, if you would please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Richard LaRue, and I live at 20 North Street in Saco, Maine. And I'd like to just start out with just two quick thoughts.
Yes, please speak into the microphone.
Sorry. I've had the privilege now for about 3 years to serve on the Saco River Corridor Commission. That was an appointment made by the council and by the chair at the time that that position was open. I've learned a lot being on the Saco River Corridor Commission. I understand more than I thought I ever would, and I still have a lot to learn. Having said that, as a lifelong educator, I've been going to school for over 57 years. I've found that knowledge is essential to make good decisions. And it seems very, very smart from my point of view that if you're going to partner with anyone in this particular situation, you want to partner with the Saco River Corridor Commission. I don't know everything there is to know about water quality or about maintaining our rivers, but I can tell you that the conglomeration of volunteers that serve on the Saco River Corridor Commission and our wonderful administrator and leader, they do know the answers. They do know where we need to make changes. And to not depend upon those individuals, to not reach out, would be like trying to run a business without having very much direction. And so I'm going to strongly encourage you to listen today and contemplate how important it is that the burden of decisions on what's going on in the Saco River doesn't just rest on this city council, but it also rests on the state of Maine through the Saco River Corridor Commission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Hauser.
Yes. Hello, everyone. My name is Dallin Hauser. I'm the Executive Director for the Saco River Corridor Commission.
Excuse me, would you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Dallin Hauser, and 42 Reservoir Hill Road, Parsonsfield, Maine. So I was just informed that I'll be given the opportunity to address our arguments made by Mr. Bennett and Mr. Lambert. So I'll try to keep my points as brief as possible here. But one, we wanted to first just note that this whole process has been handled in a way that we feel rushed the commission in order to come towards some sort of resolution. We were given a period of 2 weeks of time to determine and come up with proposed changes to the act that we needed to make in a matter of 2 weeks. This is in response to extremely complicated policy matters. And so we came to the table, we presented something to the city leadership that we felt the commission would be in support of at that time. Now, all of our efforts were completely discounted, and that legislation which we had proposed was thrown out the window, and what was done instead was legislation was submitted by the city leadership of Biddeford and Saco to Senator DeChambeau without our approval and without our knowledge of what would be in the bill, what the contents of the bill would contain, which is essentially the removal of the Saco River Corridor Commission's regulatory authority from the downtown areas in Saco and Biddeford unless there is a change to the net non-vegetated surface area in the downtown area. This would absolutely weaken the regulations, environmental protections currently in place in these cities. The commission is one of the few entities that's mentioned in the legislation that the city leaders claim make us redundant. Among the list, they mentioned shoreland zoning regulations, approval of MS4 water quality permitting, local comprehensive plans, protection through traditional downtown zoning, and historic preservation overlay zones, DEP site law, Army Corps of Engineer review, and both the provision of public water and sewer on both sides of the river. Now, for the most part, most of these regulatory mechanisms are carried out by the city themselves with the oversight, sometimes with DEP, or, of course, excluding the Army Corps of Engineers or NERPA Act. So the removal of the commission and our standards, which are entirely different from the other regulations mentioned would absolutely weaken standards currently in place. I have a whole bunch of other things to mention about changes that we can make on a local level that we've already moved forward doing. And yeah, just one more comment I'd like to make, Mr. Mayor, if I may, is that we would absolutely like the legislative designation to be able to attend and be a part of this conversation because it involves major changes to the environmental regulations in place in the cities. I do understand you said there would be a public hearing on the 19th for that. Secondly,
Oh, and you know that you're going to have plenty of time after we adjourn the meeting in order to read all of your notes to the council.
okay.
So I'd like to get to the rest of the public comment.
Okay, if you don't mind, just one more comment, and
Please
then
go right
just
ahead.
brief, because it was something that was important that the commission wanted to express, that the mayor, you sir, submitted disparaging comments regarding the commission, and basically stating that the rural nature of the typical commission member does not enable them to understand the different economic development in the city or various other code enforcement or things of that nature. And we feel that that was very offensive and inappropriate, and that an apology should be issued to the commission.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Mr. Roach?
Hello, Kevin Roach, 18 Vines Road. Boy, I came here for a completely different purpose. But I will say, since the elected body has received a letter that purports to be represented by the Saco Middle School, and I went public with my comment on social media, I will make it public to the camera and the world that I demand and many of us will demand the immediate resignation of Dominic DePatsy, the superintendent of Saco Schools, effective immediately, and give the Saco Middle School a chance to rectify the situation that we were hoping to rectify 3 months ago. This is the body to address this because the council did receive this, one. Two, the council, the city side has the police department involved in a couple issues. One, in general, truancy. Also, the Public Works houses the bus. So, but the big reason why the council can send a message, not only with their microphones and bully pulpit, but they approve the school budget to get to the voters. So one answer it could be, in protest, is not to approve a school budget for the voters, and it will go back to the prior year budget. Last year's budget was increased significantly, including Saco Middle School for 10%, and they won't even put a security camera in the hallway. And then the overall budget was increased, and then this year coming up, Thornton Academy has less students, so you can use the same budget last year and have more money that way. And then the state reimbursement, the ED 279, is going to be more this year, supposedly. So I don't think the schools and the kids will suffer as much if the council wants to make a statement that this performance by the superintendent will no longer be tolerated. Okay? Fair? Anyway, that's my statement on that subject. As for the Saco River Corridor Commission, I hear that this might get to the State House to eliminate their oversight of the downtown. I truly don't want it to get that far. However, things are not being handled well locally here. You know, we weren't allowed, in the summer, when we went to present, no public's allowed to speak from Saco. No public comments allowed. All right? The video was not allowed to video the proceedings, but this shouldn't be about one person or personalities or whatever. This should be about what can be best done for the citizens of Saco. That's all. I mean, regardless we've heard the contamination on the site. So I just hope we can resolve this locally. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Bukes? Oh, you pass, okay. Ms. Amends? You pass also, okay. Mr. Biggs? Please state your name and address for the record.
Rob Biggs, 92 Middle Street, and we're not here to talk about rivers or schools. We're talking about flowers. So everybody can take a deep breath. So over the last year, pretty much everybody on this council has asked me to do something about the floral displays in our downtown. And so we've done some research. The current containers we've had are small. They're falling apart. They're aging out. They're many, many years old. So we've got the opportunity to purchase 25 planters similar to the ones in Post Office Park that need to be watered once every 2 to 3 weeks at max, to place throughout the downtown at basically each one of the intersections for maximum visibility. They're taller than the ones we currently have, they're larger than the ones we have, and they're easier to maintain. Saco Main Street will fill them with dirt, and we'll also get sponsors to sponsor each one of them, the flowers in them each year, as we have in the past. What I'm asking and what I'm going to do is Saco Main Street is going to purchase these planters as of tomorrow, saving $2,000. The total price will be about $9,700, and we're asking the city council to find it within themselves, somewhere within the budget and/or TIF monies, to pay for these after or reimburse us for these after we've purchased them. If we don't do it in the next 2 days, then we will cost $2,000 more, and I figured it was probably something we want to do, and also to get them in time before we hit our summer season. So with that, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. And I'll see that it shows up in a workshop, and we try to do some budget amendment.
Whatever
on
the
that.
process is for that.
Yeah, the process. Thank you. Mr. Shinet, please state your name and address for the record.
Edward Shinet, 6A Leland Avenue, Saco. I have a letter on behalf of Senator Justin Shinet here that I dispersed the copy around. So I'm going to read it out for you. Mayor, Saco City Councilors, and the City Administrator, my apologies for not being able to honor your invitation to attend tonight's meeting and workshop, but this was conveniently scheduled at the same time as the Governor's State of the State address. The entire delegation is required to be in attendance for the joint convention of the legislature in Augusta. I would like to share some frank opinions about the process that led to this point and the status of pending legislation that the City of Saco has apparently helped to draft and lobbying for. It has come to my attention that LR 2204, an act to eliminate permitting process redundancy in Saco and Biddeford's downtown, has been submitted by the senator representing Biddeford on behalf of both the City of Saco and City of Biddeford. The bill itself and the city's advocacy for it both warrant further inspection. First, the bill doesn't seek to simply eliminate redundancy. It all removes the Saco River Recorder Commission regulatory authority from a portion of our downtown areas. The Saco River Recorder Commission, who's strongly against this proposal, was founded in 1973 due to a concern for improper development and overcrowding of the corridor that would lead to the degradation of Saco River and the land around it. Improper development and overcrowding sound like areas we're most definitely familiar with here in Saco. They feared for the loss of the water quality of the rivers, which act as our drinking water reservoir and also major recreational attraction. The oversight is a necessary level of protection of our land and waterways is needed now more than ever. Eliminating the purview from Saco and Biddeford would remove a critical step in ensuring responsible development and allow developer to bypass environmental oversight. I'm all for the development and the consistency work towards supporting our downtowns, but I don't think we are so desperate for the development that we should change the rules midway through the game that have potential long-lasting negative impacts to our way of life. The rules are there for a reason and should be followed. If we can't get responsible developers that respect our water quality and environment, then they should find a different home. We have already seen how developer had tried to come in with complete disregard for our local rules, aka the cutting trees on Saco Island. This action wasn't allowed, and yet it was swept under the rug in the name of progress. How's that working for us now? Let story be a lesson for all of us. The city of Saco is advocating for the change of state law. My question to the council is, did you know this was your position? Who sets the policy objective, you or the city administrator? Do you have to have a conversation before deciding on what legislation to support as a city? Apparently, the city administrator for both cities met privately to discuss this issue back in December. After said meeting, the senator from Biddeford was asked to put forward legislation with the language suggested by the two cities. There wasn't a public meeting to openly flesh out these newfound concerns. There was no direct attempt to involve council and get input directing this as a priority to pursue. Not only that, the Saco delegation was completely left out of the loop until we started receiving calls from concerned Saco River Corridor Commission members, and then subsequently when approached about supporting the bill from the mayor and city administrator. It's now February 11th. Keep in mind, we all had a great meeting together after the election to discuss legislative priorities in a public setting. The issue was never brought up. The mayor and the city administrator should not be able to represent the position of the city without council direction, without your input, especially when it comes to lobbying members of the legislature for law changes at the state level. I understand things can move quickly, but you have cell phones, you check your emails. There is no reason not to keep you informed and request your opinion on the matter. This needs to be made clear tonight at your workshop. I should also note that I received an email from the mayor to the entire delegation dated February 7th that very much alarmed me. The email from Mayor regarding tonight's workshop indicated that the purpose of the discussion is to explain why a typical member of the Saco River Corridor Commission who resides in a far more rural and less intensely developed municipality is not equipped to comprehend the City of Saco economic development, code enforcement, police, fire, water, sewer, among other municipal services. This is offensive not only to me, but to anyone who serves in a volunteer capacity with our city and state boards and commissions. Our entire political system is predicated on the idea of citizen engagement and involvement. You yourself come from a different background and have to make decisions on complex topics. No one questions your ability to arrive at certain conclusions. Same thing for members of legislature. We are all citizens who have day jobs trying to make a difference. Our intelligence should not be questioned by the mayor. It's deeply concerning to learn the mayor's true view of input from the very individuals the city appoints to serve on local commissions. I shouldn't have to remind you that Saco and Biddeford both have member of Saco River Corridor Commission that you appointed to be there. I'm grateful for this service. I think citizens can understand municipal governance just fine because citizens are what run it. I serve as a member of Environment and Natural Resource Committee. This committee has a direct oversight of the Saco River Corridor Commission. Subsequently, this bill will be coming to my committee. I will be working to defeat this bill in the committee process and before it even has a vote on the floor of the legislature. When Saco delegation is firmly against it and the Biddeford delegation is divided, it's not a good sign of the bill. The Environment Committee isn't going to be in a good mood for loosening up environmental regulations and oversight. I would like to make clear I have no problems working with anyone with the city when it comes to advocating the best interest for our community, but I will not undermine well-established environmental oversight to speed up development along our beautiful river. Everyone should follow the rules to keep Maine a place for future generations to call home. I urge this council not to abdicate your statutory power and authority to set policy decisions and directions for the city of Saco. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have an electronic copy of this? Excuse me. Oh, you have, all right. So Michelle has an electronic copy of that. Thank you. Next up is Mr. Harkins. Please state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I'm here reluctantly again, and probably you feel the same way. But I'd like to bring a couple of matters to your attention. My name is John Harkins, I'm sorry.
Didn't you state your name and address for the record? Yeah. Please state your name.
4 Christopher Terrace.
Yes.
Mr. Administrator, would you like to revise your statements regarding the senior program made at the last meeting?
Please continue with your presentation.
The Saco Citizens for Sensible Government support the documents sent to the council and the finance director. This is the work of Ms. Coleman, not that of the SCSG. She has considerable knowledge and experience in payroll and benefit administration. Although the Saco Citizens for Sensible Government did not compose a letter, we believe she is correct in her accounting. As stated by me on several public sessions, we need to hire people with appropriate credentials for the job. The city has spent thousands of dollars needlessly because of the lack of experience in certain roles. It's time to stop the practice of hiring and providing on-the-job training in various administrative roles. Perhaps this is one reason we keep asking and adding more personnel to handle the tasks. Of note, transparency has been a long issue with our group. We've begged to have meetings recorded, including the workshop sessions. Any meeting, any group gathering is a public meeting or session. And I wish the council would look into the statute and make sure that these meetings are recorded for the public. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Thank you. Next is Christine Fowent. I apologize. I couldn't quite read your spelling. Would you
Yes,
please
my
state
name.
your name and address for
Yes,
the record?
my name is Christine Fort. My address is 149 Brown Street, Kennebunk, and I'm a professor at the University of New England. And I do understand from earlier comments that not only is there a workshop tonight, which I knew about, but there will be a public meeting on the 19th. So I'm abbreviating my comments, and I'm not sure what the proper protocol is, but for 5 years, the University of New England professors, it's about 9 of us, and about 100 undergraduates studied the Saco River estuary, and we did generate a report, a science report of the value of the estuary from a scientific perspective of species, water quality, the importance to business. And I've got copies of that report, which is also available online. And I thought, since you're just beginning this deliberation, I wanted to make those available. And the other thing we discovered in those 5 years of research that we were actually surprised about was just what excellent shape the estuary's in. And that's the area primarily below the downtown of Biddeford and Saco, and that is because of the actions of the city of Saco, the city of Biddeford, all the communities upstream. And when we teach students at UNE about the value of the estuary and how it has recovered, as you all know from the conditions in the past, we also teach that this is a laboratory for democracy. And I just wanted to thank you all for your role in that and for continuing with the public process. And if you'll just let me know what the best way to get these informations kind of to you all to use as a resource. It's
Get them in
the science report, which is online.
Electronic format. Excuse me. Can they be in electronic format? Do you have
Well,
them?
these are online, these
Okay.
big ones.
So
This
could
is
you
just
send
a,
an email to me with
okay?
that document or its URL?
I certainly, yes, whatever you
attached
want.
to it, or those documents. And the address is mayor@sacomaine.org?
I'm a
And-
very good Googler, I'll find it.
Okay, and it will be distributed, associated with the meeting packet for the 19th.
Great, thank you.
All right. Oh, yes, you want to? Thank you. Just a second. Ms. Coleman? Please state your name and address for the record.
Barbara Coleman, 45B Stockman Avenue, Saco, Maine. First, I'm going to reference back to John Harkin's comment about the city administrator's comment last week that said, the 2018 W-2s were issued for the senior program. I have an email in front of me that says, again, totally states that it was not. So, again, our seniors are not getting their W-2s until sometime later, and if we wait until August the 1st, per the chart I have given all of you, you are again looking at another $19,000 in fines just for not issuing the W-2s, and the longer you continue not to issue, the more interest and penalties. We have not looked at the FICA, Medicare, nor the 941s. So when I am told that I exaggerated my numbers, remember, I was looking at almost 9 to 10 years worth of data, and I hadn't finished the last calculation. I'd be more than willing to do it. And the amount of work that it would have taken, considering we added an additional 10 hours to our senior coordinator to assist, to make sure the 218s got out, is more amazing to me as well, because I'm not sure we've actually seen a motion before council to approve it, nor have we seen a motion to bring them to $11 an hour. So when somebody makes a statement, please understand I do have credentials. Second, I too am in receipt of the letter and email to the congressional delegation about this meeting tonight. What bothers me is, one, late arrival. Two, when you are inviting a group of people, exactly that type of group of people, you know they're in session. You should be looking in advance, at least 2 weeks out, to see their availability and to recognize tonight is the governor's State of the State Union speech at 7 o'clock. That's an easy thing to research. You make a phone call to Augusta. And also, I got a copy of the email from the mayor as well, stating the same comments that certain people have the inability to understand the complexity of the issue. That is false. Many people can learn many things at many times in their lives, and it's easy. And Councilor Copeland, you started on a process last week, and you were driving that bus again the right way. And I follow up with John Harkin's comments, and I believe all the councilors today received the law on public proceedings, and that's the key word, proceedings. Any more than 3 requires posting, minutes, recording, and that includes a workshop. So it is all there except for the executive session stuff, which is separate, and we all understand it. So council, please take it upon yourselves to get this working. It has been over 3.5 years. What are you doing to disappoint the taxpayers and the citizens of Saco? You keep hurting them, and you've got to make some changes. Make changes, then you never see me again.
Mr. Ross? Dan Ross? Yes, sir. Please step forward, state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I'm Dan Ross at 54 Ferry Lane. I'm here because I watched the public hearing on the Camp Jetty on TV, and somebody said that tonight would be the night you'd have an opportunity to comment on that at that hearing. I heard a lot of people at that hearing express the desire to do something, anything. I didn't hear a lot of people stepping back to see whether the the deal on offer really made sense. So I wanted to ask point some things out that I heard, and I might be mistaken. I heard that we agreed to take on all the cost overruns, that the budget was limited to $26.9 million, and we would agree to pay everything over that. And I heard that estimate was done years ago. Nobody's updated it. Nobody really knows what the original estimate is based on, how accurate it is, or how much this project is going to cost. But whatever it is, we're going to pay everything over 26.9. Is that a nod?
Oh, excuse me.
I'm not going to ask
I
you.
actually asked
Right.
that you make your comments.
Okay, that's fine.
and,
I also heard that the city is going to take on all liability in the future, that whatever goes wrong, the federal government and the Army Corps of Engineers, now they get to wash their hands of it. And if anybody has to, anything goes wrong, if, God forbid, houses still wash away or neighboring beaches start to disappear, they can't blame the Army Corps of Engineers anymore, they blame the city of Saco. What are we getting for all of this? I heard that we're getting an unproven solution that's been tested in a laboratory with methodology that nobody's really knows how accurate it is. That at best, what did I hear? It might reduce 20% of the wave action. I'm not sure if that's the right number. That even if it does that, it's going to be temporary and nobody knows how long it's going to be for. And there are unknown side effects on the neighboring beaches. And so at best, I heard that it's a temporary Band-Aid that might not even stop the bleeding. But if anything goes wrong, now it's the city of Saco's fault. I just wanted to say that to me this sounds like a bad deal, that our children and grandchildren are going to be paying for this. And one day people are going to look back and ask, who signed this?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. That's it for public comment. So, without further ado, we have nothing on the consent agenda. And so I would like to ask Councillor Johnston excuse me, to remove, make a motion to remove from the table the motion that was tabled at our February 4th meeting.
So moved.
Do I have a second? The motion is made by Councillor Johnston and seconded by Councillor Smart to remove this matter from the table for council discussion. So, since it's associated with a tabling motion, I'm just going to ask for a vote. Councillor Archer?
Aye.
Councillor Gay?
Yes.
Councillor Doyle?
Yes.
Councillor Copeland?
Yes.
Councillor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councillor Smart?
Yes.
And Councillor Johnston?
Yes.
The motion passes 7-0. Before you is the request made by the city administrator for some direction. Does anyone wish to speak to this to my left? Seeing none, anybody wish to speak to this to my right? Councillor Gay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to know the final results of this. Does this come back to the city council for a final vote? Or is this the final vote?
This is the vote that instructs the city administrator on the budget preparation. After this, the budget will be done, at least loosely based on this instruction. This is to give some general direction. I think it has more to do with what's anticipated to be the rate of inflation in the city's assessment. It has to do with whether we're looking only at building permit growth, or if we go to a higher number, we're also looking at real estate sales changes, presumably
Mr. Mayor.
growth. Okay?
Thank you.
Councilor Minthorn.
We need you to speak into the microphone.
So, yes, and I need to speak into the microphone also. So I appreciate,
Thank you.
as you know, I appreciate all of the positive criticism that I've received from everybody.
You know, it's amazing. When you sit at home and somebody starts talking like this, you do not hear them. It drops off instantly. And we all need to learn to speak. And
That's right. And
some
you-
of us need to learn to turn it on from time to time,
That's right.
too.
And you know, during school board meetings, I appreciate those of you who do watch from home and send me text messages.
I have been known to do that on several occasions.
And I thank you. So, again, the idea here is that there is going to be some direction in terms of the growth in assessed value so that when the mill rate is estimated, the only person who does a mill rate calculation is the city's assessor, and the city's assessor has really nothing to do with this estimate. It is more of an effort to give the council some guidance when we look at the final, what we presume will be close to the mill rate change of both the school budget and the city operations budget. Councilor Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have a question on what we're anticipating already as expenditures moving forward. What percentage increase are we looking at with all we've approved for the contracts and so forth? What are we looking at as far as a percentage increase at this moment?
I think we need to hold that discussion up for the departmental presentations.
Mr. Mayor, I asked the question because
Yes.
I don't know that the RAD process is the most effective way to look at the budget when it shows an inaccurate mill rate, because as you just said, the city assessor sets the mill rate. So we can sit there and go through the RAD process and really say what we're in favor of and what we're not, but in the end, the mill rate, as this happened last year, did not. It actually caused some chaos between the school board and the city council over a 55-cent mill rate increase that didn't happen.
Right.
So if we want to truly look at the budget, we should look at an expenditure-based budget, not a RAD-based budget, and look at what the expenditures currently are with what we've already approved, and then maybe what the next step is, how much we're willing to go in expenditures, because
At this-
expenditures drive the budget.
Right.
And I just want to point out
Okay.
that when we're talking about evaluation, I'm reading an article from February 4th, 2019, from Maine Biz. Standish, Maine's 2018 hottest towns for home sales. I want to, top 10, Saco, 329 in 2017, 341 in 2018, which was a 3.65% increase. The median 2018 price was $278,500, while the 2017 was $256,500 for an 8.5% increase. Now, I will point out that if you read the article, and you know it's from February 4th, it does say that this probably is not going to keep up. But with the amount of permits that we're seeing in code enforcement and planning, rather, we need to really look at this and look at our expenditure base. And what we're going to see in expenditure increases, not a RAD-based calculator that, in the end, is going to tell folks an
All right.
incorrect number.
And so, as we discussed at the end of this last budget session a year ago, well, less than a year ago, but we are going to be looking at budgeting on a zero-based budget basis, and then look at RADs after we have seen each department's budget. And so it's not as if we're going to ignore each line of each department, and then we're going to, after we've done that, because we are going to do that, and after we've done that, we're going to look at anything that each of the departments would like to have above that. And so that's the plan. Mr. Sutherland.
Thank you. And I believe that was the presentation last week talked specifically about a maintenance of effort budget, and those are all of the things we approved. And Glennis is here and can answer the question of how much has been approved this year that we're going to need to increase by, a total dollar amount.
Certainly. So to go through the three scenarios, just so you have an idea of percentage increase, the zero mill rate percentage increase, or the zero mill rate budget directive, would be a 2.5% increase in the budget. The maintenance of effort budget scenario would be a 5% increase in the budget. And then the critical needs would be a 9.6% increase in the budget. We can certainly, as we go through the RAD discussion process, provide additional analytics at the top of that tool that state explicitly the budget change or percentage increase, if that's something the council would like to see.
But certainly, we're going to be looking at each department's budget on a zero-based
Absolutely, that's
budgeting
correct.
process.
So,
that comes first.
Yep, so
I'm just looking for a number to start with, so as a request, I'm asking the council to give me some directive in terms of what you believe this community is comfortable with in terms of essentially a dollar amount to bring to you. If that's a zero mill rate increase, then I'm going to need to cut out of the budget. If it's a maintenance of effort, given what you have approved so far this year, that's the budget I'm recommending this council give me as a directive. And then the other side of the coin, which Councilor Doyle has mentioned and discussed, the valuation. Understanding the valuation is an important part of this budget process. Why does it exist? How does it exist? How does it affect the mill rate? At this time, I had recommended we're recommending a $35 million increase in our value. It could be a little higher than that, and that's okay. If the council says, show us something that's closer to the $60 or $70 million increase, again, we don't decide that. That's the responsibility of the assessor, who's a steward of the state, but we can use that number to then drive what that mill rate number looks like as we make changes to the budget, whether it's a RAD or whether it's cuts into specific departments.
Thank you. Councilwoman Thorne.
Now that I'm in my going on fourth budget, I've grown a little in knowledge along this pathway. A couple of the concerns I have, it seems like we continually have had items buried in department budgets that we don't really see necessarily that come out in the RAD process. That something's budgeted, we're adding this or doing that, there's money there, they go ahead and have already built it in. I would like to see all the built-ins come out so we actually see the line-by-line items so we can actually make smart choices, if you will, department by department. Secondly, the other thing I noticed in looking at this is that if we have a zero increase in the mill rate, we're seeing about a $350,000 reduction, and yet the 44% increase, or 44-cent increase in the mill rate to be at the maintenance of effort level is only about a $300,000 increase, or $308,000 increase. So somewhere in there, the numbers aren't exactly playing out. And, you know, I understand this is basically we're throwing a dart at a dartboard with 9 boxes right now. And I just hope that we can have a lot more open budget, open discussion, and not have the padding we've seen in some places in past years where stuff is buried in the budget and, you know, oh, you approved that. It was in my budget, and we knew nothing about it. And I'd like to get rid of that surprise factor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Copeland.
I concur with Councilor Doyle and Councilor Minthorn. And I don't think that we should be providing a number. So if I'm doing my budget at home, I'm not saying, well, how much can I spend? I'm looking at what do I have to spend? And then I'm making decisions based on what's left. So I don't think it makes any logical sense to me to give a number. I understand from your point of view that that's nice to have a number to work from, but I think that it should be expense-based. Let's see what it takes to run the government and maintain services. What are those expenses? You tell us.
So just
Maintenance
a
of
quick explanation. This is more like business budgeting where you're making an estimate on what your sales growth would be, whereas when you're doing a home budget, a personal budget, you're actually saying, well, I believe that, I'm going to be making X number of dollars in
Well, Mr. Mayor,
two
respectfully,
wages.
we've just already understood that we are not going to have the assessor's number. So that's
don't
the
get
income you're
that.
talking about? So you're asking us to
No, I'm asking...
come up with these
the-
projections
no,
out of thin
I'm
air?
asking the finance department to make a recommendation of what they see, because that...
Well, that's
when
not what
you're-
I'm hearing. You're asking us to give a directive to them.
Well, they've made a suggestion on where it would be, and they're asking for a choice on whether or not, and I think that the assessed value choice is difficult, but the...
Impossible?
Well, I've done business plans, so it's not entirely impossible, but the...
I've done
but-
business plans too.
Well,
Mr.
then
Mayor.
you understand much more thoroughly than your comment indicates.
Mr. Mayor,
All I'm trying
are
to
you
say...
insulting me?
No, I'm not.
Like you did
I'm
the
just-
Conservation, the Saco River Corridor Commission?
So what I'm
Please.
trying to do is attempt to get you to understand that they're just asking for some direction in the amount of spending.
Sir,
Yes,
please
ma'am.
be respectful. This is civil discourse.
I hope that it is, yes.
I'm not feeling it.
Okay.
If we are to get information and say that let's maintain the budget at what expenses we have, why is he asking for a number? If we can just say she's going to give us the number, we can say, okay, let's go with that number, if that's what we choose.
Okay.
So why is he asking for a number?
That could be a change in the motion. What you just stated could well be the direction. They're merely looking for a direction.
I make that motion.
So we have to vote down so let's vote on the initial motion that's out there. And if it loses, then you have a motion to make. Councilor Johnston.
So we had three options that staff put together to basically start the process of a budget. I had the advantage on the Wednesday prior to the last meeting of seeing that presentation, and I agreed at the time with Kevin that I would make the motion to go with the middle-of-the-road budget. Somehow we're trying to rethink everything, and I'm rather confused. All we're doing is giving him a directive to build a budget, not a aggressive budget and not a conservative budget, somewhere in the middle. At the end of the day, it's still going to come back to us. We're still going to tear it apart. We're doing zero-based budgeting. So I don't understand why we're kind of running around in circles here.
He's asking for a number.
He's not looking for a definitive number,
Yeah.
Councilor Copeland. I'm just trying to explain it to him.
No, please address the chair.
Again, all he's looking for is a estimated valuation based on what staff has given us. Right?
Thank you.
And-
Yeah. No, anything else to add, Councilor Johnston?
I mean, I would just suggest, we have a long night. Either you go forth with this motion, or somebody else can pick one of the other motions that was provided, and we can go with those, and we'll vote it however.
Thank you. Councilor Minthorn.
I have a much simpler motion. Why don't we go with an absolute maintenance of effort budget, given all our contractual obligations? Add to that the Social Security cost of living adjustment that all of our seniors have to live by as a percentage increase, and that's our starting point. Because there's not one senior in this town that has a penny more than that to spend on their taxes. They got their 1.9% cost of living adjustment. So what are our contractual obligations? What's 1.9% above that? And that's our starting point.
Thank you. Any comments to my right? Any other comments to my left? So the motion on the floor right now is...
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. I put my hand up, you just didn't see it.
You did? Oh,
So.
okay. I was looking quickly.
So you're asking for a directive, and I started looking at the numbers. Last year, we collected $44,600,000 from our real and personal property tax. I've been hearing we haven't inflated, we're in a prosperity moment in the city of Saco, economy-wise. And
Councilor Archer, sec.
Yep, thank you. And I've been hearing numbers of like 2%, 5%, all these numbers that we're expecting our valuations to go up. What I can tell you, what I'm interested in is basing off of $44,600,000, I'm interested in a 2% raise on that amount. What we collect from our city taxpayers to be 2% higher than that, understanding that our property values are rising higher than that. Something close to that will give us a reasonable mill rate. So about 2% of $44,600,000 is about $1 million increase. That's where I'm looking at for this new budget. Now, what that's talking about, that's not talking about the other revenues that we have is building rentals, cable television franchise fees, city clerks, code enforcement. We have all these other sources of revenue. I'm not looking at that. What I'm looking at is I don't want to see too much higher than 2% on our real and personal property tax, which would be about $45,600,000 for the next year.
Thank you. Any additional comments to my right? Councilor Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out that in the past 2 years, Saco has experienced a $100 million increase in 2019 into 2018 into 2019, and then 19 into 20, so for 18 into 19, $70 million increase. So we've had some pretty significant increases in home values coming in. So just FYI.
Thank you very much, Councilor Doyle. Any additional comments to my right? Any comments to my left? Councilor Johnston.
So, again, this is a question for council. Is the issue the estimated valuation? Is that the issue we're having, that it's too low? In the motion is 35 million.
I'm ready to
I'm just trying to get somewhere.
I'm ready to just ask that we conclude the comment and vote, and should it be voted down, I'm going to go numerically, starting at Councilor number 1 and ending up at Councilor number 7 for a motion and a second, and then discussion and a vote until we finally resolve the approach that the council is suggesting, really, that the city staff follow. So, any other comments to my left? Seeing none. To my right? Seeing none. So the motion on the floor is, Councilor Johnston, would you read the motion on that's...
I move to direct the city administrator to develop a version of the FY 2020 budget that maintains current city efforts, and further direct the city administrator to make use of a moderate valuation increase of 35 million in the modeling, the impact of any budget action on the property tax rate. I move to approve the order.
Second.
And that has been made by Councilor Johnston and seconded by Councilor Smart. And I've asked for comments, and we've had plenty. So, Councilor Archer? No. Councilor Gay?
No.
Councilor Doyle?
No.
Councilor Copeland?
No.
Councilor Minthorn?
No.
Councilor Smart?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
The motion fails 2-5.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, I was going to start with 1 and head over, but you want to jump in, so go right ahead.
Well, hopefully Councilor Archer will appreciate this.
Good.
I'd like to make a motion. We start maintenance of effort with what our existing contracts support and add 1.9% in deference to the senior citizens Social Security cost of living adjustment, and that be our starting point. Everything above that becomes a red.
Do you have that, Mr. Sutherland? I understand. Okay, thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
The motion has been made by Councilor Minthorn and seconded by Councilor Copeland. to follow a maintenance of effort with a 1.95%?
1.9%.
1.9%. Councilor Smart.
So we tabled this originally because it was put on our lap sort of at the last minute, and some councilors were uncomfortable not fully discussing it and thinking about it. And I have just gone from having actual numbers, monetary numbers in front of me, to having a percentage in front of me that I have no idea what that means in actual numbers. And I'm a little confused here. I mean, it was asked just a second ago that we get a number from staff that they tell us what it's going to be. And instead of that, we got 3 numbers and we were allowed to choose. And we've somehow gone backwards from that to now we have no numbers, only a percentage that I don't know what that means. And I just don't know where we're going with this. I mean, if we intended to change our budgetary process, I don't think February is the time to do it. If we want to talk about completely changing the way we do this, and I mean, this is only my 2nd budgetary cycle, so I'm a newbie here, but it seems to me that maybe we should discuss overhauling this process after we get through this current budgetary cycle, but that's just my 2 cents.
Thank you. Any additional comments to my left? Councilor Menthorn.
Having been through this a couple more times than you, it seems like there's always hidden dollars that get hidden when we do it this way. What I'm trying to do is go, what are our contracts? We have 6 or 8 labor unions. We have contracts with each of them. We know what those numbers are. Hard and real payroll is the biggest thing we do. So we've got those dollars set aside. We know what our capital plan is looking like, and thanks to Pat Fox and all of his hard work and our assets, we know what that stuff's going to look like. All I'm saying is we ratchet that up 1.9% to reflect the cost of living adjustment that our senior citizens have received, and that be the starting point. And anything we need to do above that becomes a RAD. And then we discuss item by item, department by department, what we're willing to spend above that. It's that simple. Taking it and doing this is a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of modeling and all that. But we all know at the end of the day, if the assessed value comes in up here, then there's a big chunk of money that we didn't account for. This way, we know exactly what we're accounting for, and then we can adjust the RADs as we get closer to having that assessed value come in, and then we can adjust our spending based on what the assessed value is, hopefully, before we get to May.
Excuse me, before the assessor, by law, the assessor is not able to close the assessing books until April 1st.
Right.
And it takes them some months then to reconcile those transactions, which is why they don't show up until June. But Councilor Smart.
I understand that, and I think that does make a lot of sense. First of all, I think we did make pretty clear that we wanted to see more detail in the budget this year, including more line items, and that is still what I'm anticipating seeing. And I think we're all going to go through that with a fine-tooth comb. As Councilor Johnston said, we're simply trying to give them an idea of what kind of budget we're looking for. If we want them to go with the absolute bare minimum and add 2%, I'm fine, or 1.9%, I'm fine with that, but I want to see what that number would be before I'm going to support anything. And if we could get what 1.9% of that would be, then that's something to go on.
Yes, so our,
okay.
can I provide
Ms.
a
Salas, yes.
Yeah. So our contracted obligations, the maintenance of effort version of the budget that was in the presentation from last Monday contains only contracted obligations and a forecasted assumption about our benefits cost increase, because we don't have those numbers yet. So altogether and then it also includes contracted adjustments to our TIF agreements. So altogether that comes to a 5% increase. So we could layer on the 6.9%. And of course, as I'm hearing very clearly this evening, the council will see not just the RAD column as they have in the past, but also a dollar change column from last year's budget to this year's budget. So you'll have clarification about what exactly is in those line items and the changes. However, were we to go with the motion that's on the floor, basically, each one of those dollar changes would be contracted increases. I mean, that's all we're going to put between last year's budget and this year's budget.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional comment to my right? Okay. Mr. Sutherland, anything?
I was just going to offer, we are going to go into the details of every department this year. We never were or have never tried to hide monies, as some comments have been made. But what we will do is go into every one of the line items of these budgets so that council can fully understand what we spend our money on and hopefully come out of this ahead.
Thank you. Any additional comment to my left? Seeing none. Oh, Councilor Smart.
Is there any way you can give me a ballpark of what a $35 million increase over the maintenance of budget would be percentage-wise?
When you say 35 million, do you mean the valuation increase? The valuation increase of 35 million versus last year's valuation would put us at $2.314 billion total in valuation. And so initially we had said contracted increases only, which would be about a 44-cent increase on the mill rate on that moderate valuation. If we were to add another 1.9%, that would be a couple cents more in terms of a mill rate. It would give us a little bit more breathing room in terms of developing our budgets. There's also the option, and since the motion on the floor is not addressing this specifically, we could start with 35 million and just pump it up as we get more information from the assessor. So you'll see the mill rate moving around, but we'll also provide analytics that'll show the total actual budget amount percentage increase year over year. So that number won't change, but the mill rate might move around, so that gives us more of a steadying point.
Thank you. Any additional comments or questions to my left? Seeing none. So the motion on the floor is a maintenance of effort with a 1.9% increase. Councillor Johnston?
No.
Councillor Smart?
No.
Councillor Minthorn?
Yes.
Councillor Copeland?
Yes.
Councillor Doyle?
Yes.
Councillor Gay?
Yes.
Councillor Archer?
Yes.
That motion passes 4-2. 5-2. My arithmetic seems to be off this evening. So, we all set there? Thank you very much.
You don't know it anyway.
The next item on the agenda is the administrator's update.
I have not had a chance to email this out, but I just have a couple of items. Regional dispatch, a state grant opportunity has availed itself to look to regionalize dispatch. The concept has been kicking around for a few years now, but our public safety officers on both sides of the river are exploring this funding and how a quasi-governmental model could be formed. More to come in future weeks. Flag Pond Road signalization, funding for a Flag Pond Road and Portland Road signalization and lane improvements has been realized. We've secured a business partnership initiative grant through the state. It's a partnership between the municipality, the state of Maine, and Hancock Lumber, who has just announced that they're going to be moving here to Saco. And our portion will be funded through the Park North District tax increment financing. Our city planner, I'm pleased to announce that Emily Cole Prescott has been hired as our new city planner. She will begin in her new capacity on February 25th. Since her employment here with Saco, Emily has been instrumental in moving through several TIF applications. In addition, her collaborative efforts on projects, initiatives, as well as her research has added great value to the planning and development department. Emily came to the city with experience as Elliott's town planner and several years of municipal experience across a variety of planning, development, community, and law enforcement initiatives. Please join me in welcoming Emily to Saco's team. W-2s, last week I misspoke about the W-2s comment I made for the senior volunteers. Those who had worked for the city in the fall were paid through payroll on February 1st of this year, and their time was deducted from their tax bill. They will be a part of the W-2 bills for the end of 2019-2020. This was shared with Council mid last week and updated on the Council 2/4/19 admin memo online. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. So before we get to adjourn and go into the workshop, is there any council comment or discussion? To my left, Councillor Johnston.
Of course, one of the few nights I don't have something that I normally have with me, but on the Flag Pond Road signalization, I suggest that the city look into the traffic movement permit, because I believe that was supposed to be borne by Mr. Salner, or Elliot Chamberlain, rather.
Right, Elliot Chamberlain. Okay. All right, thank you. Something for additional for you to pay attention to?
I'm aware of it.
And Mr. Sutherland said he's aware of that. First, Councillor Archer, and then Councillor Doyle. Did you have your hand? No. Councillor Gay? Okay, Councillor Archer?
Yes, it was brought up earlier, I became of interest of it. Kevin, could you just look up to see what the cost would be to broadcast workshops? What it would actually add to the budget? This is including staff time and things to that nature.
Yeah, we intend to include it as part of the budget process for 2020.
All right.
And the budget workshops will be broadcast?
Correct. The budget workshops will be broadcast.
All workshops.
Yes,
I understand. I'm just
Okay.
trying to clarify.
That's a 2020 request.
Gotcha.
Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that was brought up earlier tonight, I just want to kind of agree with it and see if we can't utilize some of the $86,000 that we discussed a couple of meetings ago, overage on the on our 10%. Maybe some of that funding could go to Saco Main Street to buy those the $10,000, $9,700 for those flower planters for the long-term beautifying of our downtown. So I would suggest that we use some of that funding to pay for those so that we can get them at a lower cost now rather than $2,000 more if we wait.
I'll work with staff to find a place to pay for that.
And I would second that if it was ever brought forward over the 10%.
Any other comments? Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
It's fine. It's.
Excuse me. I didn't see the hand. I apologize.
I was just going to ask the administrator if, in addition to funding a position to film workshops and council meetings, when you prepare your budget, could you plan to also maybe film planning board meetings? Because that's something that most communities do film and we don't.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, planning board meetings are good to record. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Oh, I have a motion by Councilor Gay, seconded by Councilor Archer. So, Councilor, any comments? Left? Right?
Since we're already taping this, can they just leave it on? Because I know Kevin knows how to shut it off.
Power
on. And just let it
Excuse
go,
me.
at least we have the
Councilor
audio
Archer?
captured of the
Councilor Gay?
workshop. Yes.
Councilor Doyle?
Yes.
Councilor Copeland?
Yes.
Councilor Minthorn?
Yes.
And Councilor Smart?
Yes.
And Councilor Johnston?
Yes.
The motion to adjourn passes 7-0. Thank you. So, we now enter the workshop.
I know.
I'd like to call this workshop to order.